one of the 7 precursors and the first psychics. As we know it, the Zroni were the most powerful psionics ever to have graced our galaxy. They would humble even the mighty Holy Guardians who exist today. All we know of the Zroni is catalogued from psionic crystals, which they use to contain their memories and emotions. It is a technology far beyond what we have managed to accomplish. The first of these crystals was found in the center of a perfectly untouched city. Normally with dead planets you would find signs of death and destruction, but not so here. It was as if the inhabitants simply vanished overnight. Other than the city itself and a light blue dust, there was no sign that life ever existed in this place. However, it is here that we first learned of the Zroni existence and their immense psychic abilities. If our interpretations are correct, the Zroni soon made contact with the beings who occupy the Shroud. It is unclear if a bargain was made, but from this point it seems their power exploded. The Zroni learned to psionically enter the Shroud and acquired the ability to manipulate its essence to their whim. They created a utopia unlike anything that had ever been seen before. Imagine for a moment a place where any thought could become reality in a heartbeat, all answerable to you. That, I imagine, is a drug that is very hard to give up. Furthermore, they learned that the Shroud touches all physical space simultaneously. They had the ability to enter at one physical point and psionically jump to any other part of the known galaxy. Quite the feat. It is perhaps because of this power we found little evidence of expansion. The Shroud, it seems, enveloped their entire culture, science, entertainment, and all walks of life were pushed aside in order to fuel their need to enter the Shroud. As I mentioned earlier, the Zroni were aware that other entities lived within the Shroud. Sadly, little information on the speculation exists beyond the assumption that many arrogantly dismissed these entities as any real threat. Some of the Zroni speculated these entities were having a subtle impact on their culture. The group believed that these entities were power beyond measure and were trying to subvert the Zroni to their will. Sadly, it seems this was not further explored. We don't know exactly when, but at some point the Zroni learned that their new powers came at a cost. They learned that the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, the same one that we see today, was growing. And it became clear to them that this was fueling their ability to manipulate the Shroud. With every change the Zroni made, this black hole grew larger and larger, consuming the mass of the physical galaxy and siphoning the energy back into the Shroud. This discovery would shape the way that the Zroni civilization would come to an end. Debate engulfed the Zroni, and two sides formed, the Divine and the Saviors. Argument led to division, and division turned into a fully fledged civil war. The Divine felt that the fate of the physical galaxy was no concern of theirs. Of course, they would continue to live as gods within the Shroud, irrespective of what happened to the rest of the galaxy. The Saviors were aghast at this. They had no wish to live as parasites, preying on other races. Siphoning energy from the physical world to fuel their base desires was abhorrent to this group. And besides, even without their ability to enter and manipulate the Shroud, their psionics still guaranteed them a near utopian existence in the physical galaxy. Beyond this point, most of the records focus on the war. The majority of the Zroni population sided with the Saviors, and while this gave the Saviors an advantage, the Divine were now unshackled, and able to use the full might of the Shroud, whereas the Saviors were limited to the power that they could draw from within their own bodies. In any other war, this would have been more than enough, but the power of the Shroud was immense, and it seems at this point the Divine was sure to win the war. That is until a discovery was made by a Savior scientist. The crystals do not give him a name, but merely call him the Hero. He theorized he could turn his power upon itself and consume himself in a chain reaction. The Hero put his theory into action, consuming himself, and all that remained was a dusty residue. That residue is what we now know to be called Zoro. This dust was essentially the sum of his total psionic potential and could be used by another psion to extend their abilities far beyond what they could accomplish alone. This great sacrifice turned the tide of the war. The Divine began to lose and became increasingly desperate. In their desperation, they spawned ever more increasing horrors, shaping the Shroud into beings beyond all measure of rage and madness. The war, it seems, was not over yet, and would not end with victory for either side. The Divine had fallen beyond all measure of reason, and according to the records, a pact was made with one of the entities occupying the shroud, a pact they named the End of the Cycle. The divine strategy would be to expend untold energy in order to grow the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy exponentially, effectively wiping out the galaxy and the saviors with it. Fortunately for us, this did not happen. The saviors made their way to their capital world of Zroni, a world that still exists today, however cleaved in two by psionic energy. It is here that the saviors made the ultimate sacrifice to stop the divine madness. Every savior except one consumed themselves in a giant psionic sacrifice, channeling the power of their entire species into one lone Zroni. This lone Zroni used this immense power to end the existence of the divine and killing himself in the process. In the snap of a finger, the Zroni were totally annihilated and turned to dust, thus ending the threat of the divine for good. Although there are rumors that a being occupies one of the Zroni crystals held in the Curator archive, but this is just a rumor. A relic of that nature would be unspeakably dangerous. And this is where the story ends, at least until another foolish empire decides to make a pact with the entities of the Shroud. If you've enjoyed this video and want to watch another one focusing on the Cybrex, please click the video on screen now.